Hey, what's good, everybody? I'd like to welcome you all back to the Boombox Guru channel. I'm your host, LB. So today we're doing an album review. I'm gonna be talking about one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. Album that's been one of my favorites ever since I was a kid, and I heard it over 20 years ago now, and that is the Dogg Pound's Dogg Food, released in 1995, October 31st, 1995, on Death Row Records. One of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. This right here is a first pressing. This is an original first pressing right here. We'll get into that a little bit later in the video. See, I also have the 2001 digitally remastered version too. This was the version that I heard back in 2001 when Death Row started reissuing all those classic albums. Cause 1995, man, I was what 4 or 5 years old. I was young. I was real young. So of course I wasn't even buying CDs at that point. I wasn't even at that age when I was buying music. And honestly, I don't even remember like hearing a lot of people around me that were older bumping this record. But that might have been because I was a little kid and this is an explicit hip hop record. But yeah, Dogg Food. This is the debut album from the Dogg Pound. And the Dogg Pound, they are a rap duo consisting of two MCs, Daz and Kurupt. Daz is also a producer, and he actually produced a good majority of the songs on this album. He's also the first cousin of Snoop Dogg, and he hails from Long Beach, California, East Side to be exact. Kurupt, which is this gentleman right here. This is Daz. This is Kurupt. This gentleman right here, Kurupt, man, one of the greatest MCs of all time. He's originally from the East Coast, of Philly to be exact. Moved out to LA when he was around 16 years old to live with his father. And he quickly started to earn a reputation in the streets of LA for being a lyricist and for his battle raps. And him and Snoop Dogg, before either one of them was famous, they crossed paths back in the day, and they used to battle each other, and neither one of them could beat each other. Snoop Dogg tells the story all the time how they would battle each other, and it got to the point where they weren't even battling; they were like complimenting each other. So they became close friends and they became allies instead of rivals. And they made a deal that if either one of them was to get a record deal before the other one, that they would put the other one on. And of course, we all know history showed that Snoop Dogg got his record deal first, and he came back and got Kurupt. But the Dogg Pound, they actually made their first appearance on Dr. Dre's The Chronic, the massively successful Chronic, one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time. They made their debut on that album, but they weren't the Dogg Pound at that point. They were solo artists. Somewhere in between The Chronic and Snoop's debut album, another classic, hip hop classic, Doggystyle, they became the Dogg Pound. And they made of course they made their appearance as the Dogg Pound on Snoop's debut album, Doggystyle. They also appeared on the Poetic Justice soundtrack, the Above the Rim soundtrack, which was released by Death Row, and the Murder Was the Case soundtrack that was released by Death Row Records. And it was actually the Murder Was the Case soundtrack that I personally think was their breakthrough, because they had a hit single off of that soundtrack called What Would You Do, which they actually, I think that, yeah, they were nominated for a Grammy for that song. I don't think they won it, but they were nominated for a Grammy. And that song also appeared on the soundtrack to the movie Natural Born Killers. But Daz and Kurupt, man, the Dogg Pound album it was highly anticipated upon its release. You had The Chronic, you had Doggystyle, and they had made such standout appearances on those records, man, that everybody who was a fan of Death Row at that time, they were really anticipating to see what the Dogg Pound was going to do with their own debut album. And something that's really interesting though, and this is something that I found out interesting. I believe Kurupt actually talked about this in an interview, but the Dogg Pound, they really weren't Death Row's top priority. They weren't. He said that they weren't even planning on putting them out. What happened was, the Lady of Rage, she was slated to come up after Snoop. I think it was actually going to be Snoop, RBX, and then Rage, but RBX ended up leaving. But Lady of Rage, she had a hit single with Afro Puffs from the Above the Rim soundtrack, and she was real hot. So she was slated to come up next, but According to Reggie Wright Jr. of Bomb First, she just took too long on writing. Apparently, she takes a long time when it comes to writing or whatever, and she didn't really have nothing ready to put out a full length album. But the whole while, Daz and Kurupt were knocking out songs. I believe Daz had his own in house studio at his home, so him and Kurupt were just knocking out tracks, and they had enough songs to where they had a full length album, and they took them to Suge. Suge Knight, who was the CEO of Death Row Records, and he liked what he heard, and they convinced Suge to put the record out. Suge decided that we're gonna put the Dogg Pound out, and Snoop and Dre was actually against it. Snoop and Dre was actually against it at first. They was like, nah, Rage is first, ladies, meaning the lady of Rage, but she didn't have anything. She was taking a long time on her writing or whatever, according to Reggie Wright Jr. That's what he says. I don't know. I don't know. There could be other explanations to why she didn't come out with anything at that particular period. But in any case, the Dogg Pound, they should decided to put the record out on them, and they called it Dogg Food. But this is definitely one of the greatest albums to come off of Death Row Records, and I always kind of view the Chronic, Doggstyle, and Dogg Food as a trilogy of sorts, because the Chronic was the record that really redefined West Coast hip hop, especially from Los Angeles. It really popularized the G-Funk sound, even though Dre wasn't he wasn't the first one to do it. We give that credit to Above the Law, because they definitely were the ones that created it. But the Chronic was the record that really popularized that sound of hip hop. It was something different. It was something that nobody had ever heard before, and it redefined the sound of West Coast hip hop for a few years. It started with that record. Then Snoop's Doggystyle comes out, and that just extends the longevity of it, and it really cements its status as like the key sound in West Coast hip hop. Because at that point, by the time Doggystyle came out, a lot of other West Coast artists were following suit with that sound, and I think that the Dogg Pound was the next one to really kind of continue that success in that particular period of mid-90s West Coast hip-hop, especially G-Funk. But I believe I mentioned earlier that Daz is also a well-established producer. He's one of the greatest producers ever. He actually produced the majority of these songs on the album, because Dr. Dre didn't produce anything on this album, even though he was the top producer on Death Row at that time. But he did mix the whole entire album. And Daz isn't the only one producing on here. There's other producers on here. DJ Pooh produced a few tracks on here. Actually, he produced one of the biggest hits on the album. Superfly produces some really great tracks on here, and LT Hutton also has some production credits on here. But majority of it is Daz. He does the majority of it, and I just really dig this album, man. I still remember the day when I first heard it. It was an older homie of mine's that I used to attended church with, man. He, at the time, man, he had a lot of these albums on CD and everything, and he used to let me borrow a lot of his CDs. And I remember that this was around the time when I really just kind of got into that classic Death Row era, and he had let me borrow Doggystyle and a few other stuff. But this one right here, I still remember him letting me borrow it, and I had it for a while, man. I just listened to this album nonstop, because back then, when I was that age, I was probably 11, 12. I used to listen to like CDs, I was a kid. I didn't have a job or anything. All I had to do was go to school. So I had so much more free time than I do now as an adult, where I could really listen to like a new album and just really get into it. I mean, so much so that by the time I gave this CD back to him, man, I think I had memorized dang near all the lyrics on every song. And sometimes when I listen to this album today, I'll still remember some of the lyrics. I mean, I kind of need help. I kind of have to have the song playing before I can really listen to it and remember the lyrics. But I remember back then, I could just remember the lyrics without even hearing the song. Just like that. That's how much I would listen to this album. But it was one of my favorites, man. And I kind of think that it's a bit underrated too. When you talk about the other albums like the Chronic, Doggystyle, and Tupac's 2 records on Death Row, All Eyes on Me, and the Machiavelli album, Normie, I would say Normie hip hop listeners probably don't know much about the Dogg Pound or this record, but people that are real fans, like diehard fans of West Coast hip hop heads, like diehard fans of Death Row records, like especially the classic era of Death Row, they gonna know about this album and they know the greatness of it. So this album's got what? I think it's got 17 tracks on here. So we're gonna go through them. Try to be quick. Try not to ramble too much on these tracks because it is a long track listing. So first track on here is a 17-second intro. Not much importance. I mean, I think Dr. Dre appears on it and he says a little something on it, but 17 seconds, it goes by quickly. Then it goes to the official second song, which is titled Dogg Pound Gangsters. Man, one of my favorite tracks on this album. This one is produced by Daz. One of his best beats, man. This is a hard gangster G-Funk beat, man. I mean, it's got the spooky synthesizers. It's got that bass heavy bounce to it, like, you know, specifically for like 6'4" Impala type music. It's just the perfect album opener to a hip hop record, man. And Daz and Kurupt, man, they go hard on this lyrically. They go hard on it, man. As a matter of fact, on Kurupt's verse, he takes a shot at Bone Thugs and Harmony. There's a line in there where he says, "Ain't no harm in me, ain't got no love for no hoes in Harmony." Because at the time when this album was being recorded, there was that whole beef between like Death Row and Ruthless Records because Dr. Dre had left NWA. So him and Eazy-E was kind of going back and forth. You know, Dre dissed him on the Chronic, and then Eazy-E came out with Real Compton CDGs with BG, Knockout, and Drayster. So going into this album, man, there's gonna be a lot of songs that find the Dogg Pound actually like responding back to some of their disses. But yeah, one of the best album openers I've ever heard, man. Really, really good song. Like if you're somebody that at the time wasn't all that familiar with the Dogg Pound, or maybe you kind of forgot who they were, that track definitely will re-familiarize you with who they were. I mean, a perfect title, Dogg Pound Gangsters, man. It just let you know. And Snoop Dogg also pops up on that track. He doesn't spit a verse, but he comes in towards the end and he kind of just talks a little bit. You know what I'm saying? And there's also a really funny skit at the end of the song that's tacked on to the end of the song, like the classic W Balls radio station that Snoop and his crew always did on their records. One of those funny skits pops up at the end. It's real funny. But the next track number 3, is Respect. Now, this song right here, this has always been one of my favorite Dogg Pound songs. One of my favorite Death Row songs. One of my favorite G-Funk songs of all time. I'm going to tell you something. This particular track right here, if you're somebody that doesn't really know much about G-Funk or what the G-Funk sound is, this is one of those tracks that you really need to check out. It's called Respect. That song is one of the best representations of the G-Funk sound. I mean, it's got a bass heavy beat. I mean, the beat bounces like a 6'4" Impala. It's got that gangster bounce to it, particularly for people in low riders and for the gang bangers and so forth. And it's got those melodic keys in the background as well as those P-Funk inspired harmonies. I mean, everything about this song exemplifies what G-Funk is. And another great thing about it is, man, Daz and Kurupt, man, they are definitely getting the pocket when it comes to flowing on this particular track. But I think what makes this song stand out amongst a lot of other G-Funk songs is that even though they flow so well on this track, they don't sacrifice their lyricism. Like, they keep that lyricism intact on this particular song. Because one thing about G-Funk is, as much as I enjoy G-Funk, as much as that's being one of my favorite forms of hip-hop music, especially from West Coast hip-hop, I've always felt that a lot of artists sometimes, they sacrifice lyricism for the delivery and flow of a G-Funk beat. But Daz and Kurupt did a great job in keeping the balance of both of them on here. Great song. And Prince Ital Joe, he was I think a Jamaican like dancehall artist. He was actually in Marky Mark in the Funky Bunch at one point. He pops up at the end of the song and gives a pretty dope performance as well. And I think the W Balls radio station pops up again at the end. I don't quite remember, but anyway, man, one of my favorite tracks on this album. Definitely one of the best, one of the highlights on this album. So track number 4, this is called New York, New York. And New York, New York was actually the first single from the album, and it's also one of the Dogg Pound's best known songs. Daz doesn't produce this song. DJ Pooh actually produces this, the legendary DJ Pooh. And Daz doesn't even have a verse on here. Kurupt handles all the verses, and Snoop Dogg actually shows back up He performs like little ad libs in the background, and he also laces the hook. He does the hook of this song, and the hook is an interpolation of the song "New York, New York" from Grandmaster Flash and the Furious Five. So it's kind of an ode to that song as well. New York, New York, man. I gotta tell you, this particular song, this is why Kurupt, this guy right here, excuse me, yeah, this gentleman right here, this is why Kurupt is one of my favorite MCs of all time, man, because he really showcased his lyrical abilities. He really showed everybody just how high of a caliber MC he was. I mean, granted, he is from the East Coast. He's from Philly. East Coast MCs in general, you know, most of them are known for placing more emphasis on lyricism. But what makes Kurupt such a talented MC is the fact that, you know, he's got the East Coast roots, but he also brings in the West Coast influence. Cause as much as he lyrically eviscerates this song, he's also very slick with it, which I think he can. I think the credit can go to his West Coast influence, him being slick with it. He's very slick with his words, but he's very intricate, very calculated, like some of the best wordplay that I ever heard, man. And I understand why. I understand why he's the only one that's performing on this song. I mean, it was really a showcase to show everybody just how he wasn't nothing to play with on the microphone. I mean, as a matter of fact, there was this thing in Death Row Records where anybody who wanted to get a record deal with Death Row, like if you rapped and you wanted to get a deal with Death Row, there was a process to where you had to freestyle against Kurupt. You had to beat Kurupt in the freestyle. That was the only way you was able to get a record deal. And this is something that started happening once Death Row became established and they started selling millions and millions of records. But if you was a rapper and you wanted to get signed to Death Row, one of the stipulations was you had to battle Kurupt. You had to beat him in a battle. And if you listen to this song, you'll understand that a lot of people left without getting record deals. Because Kurupt, even today, I still say he's not somebody to play with on the microphone. But New York, New York, man, great track, man. I think one of the best songs that DJ Pru ever produced, in my opinion. And this song did cause a lot of controversy because it rubbed a lot of New York City artists, hip hop artists, the wrong way. It's too much to get into on this video, but there was a whole kind of controversy that went back and forth. You know, Mobb Deep, Capone and Noriega, Tragedy Gaddafi, they made a song called LA LA, which was a response. The Dogg Pound, along with Snoop, they shot the video in New York City, in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and, you know, Biggie got on the radio and some shots were fired. You know, it was that whole East and West thing, mainly the Death Row Bad Boy situation that was kind of happening, because I think the Source Awards that year it happened. But, you know, there was a lot of tension in the air. You know, and the music video didn't help, you know, with Snoop kicking over the buildings. But check out the music video and you'll understand what I mean about the controversy that surrounded it. There's a lot of history behind like that particular song and everything. So next track, number 5, is called Smooth. Smooth is a classic. This is an album track, man. This is one of the classic tracks on this album. DJ Pooh actually produced this one as well. Snoop Dogg pops up again. He this time he's kicking a verse. Got a hook that's performed by singer Val Young, that she does a great job on. Not Kurupt, but Daz, he doesn't have a verse on this song either. Kurupt, he handles his part, and that's it, man. But real good song, man. I think Kurupt's verse in particular has been highlighted on this song. And one thing I noticed when we're listening to this album, preparing for this review, is that Kurupt's verse towards the end, it sounds like he's responding back to maybe Ruthless Records. There's just some things that he says, talk about dudes on TV dissing to get deals, people dissing him on TV. I believe that verse is a reference to when Eazy-E, along with BG Knockout and Gangsta Drayster, when they did the whole Real Compton CDGs, because that was their response to Dr. Dre and Death Row Records for dissing them on the Chronic. And that was a huge video. I mean, the Straight Outta Compton movie didn't even bring that up. But yeah, Real Compton CDGs by Eazy-E was a big one. That was a big thing back in the day between him and Dre. So I feel like his verse is in reference to that. But it's a dope track, man. One of the best on the album. All right, so track number 6 is called Psycho Like No. So Daz returns. Daz comes back in. He's back in, showing up on the track again. This is another one produced by him as well. This is one of my favorite tracks on the album as well. Again, Daz, man, he's such a dope producer, man. He really knows how to bring that hard hitting G funk on here, man. I mean, the beat again, it's got that 6/4 Impala bounce to it, man. It's got those eerie synths in the background. Snoop Dogg shows up again, but he doesn't kick a verse. He just performs the hook, which I think he did a wonderful job. I think he did a great job in lacing that hook. And the hook is actually inspired by Parliament Funkadelic, because anybody that's a fan of Parliament Funkadelic, Psycho Like No, that's a reference that showed up in the song called Aqua Boogie from their album Aqua Boogie, man. That's where that comes from. They even do the bird call. Everybody knows about the P-Funk bird call. They even do that throughout the song, man. But Daz and Kurupt, man, they kill this beat, man. Like lyrically, man, they crush it. And again, to me, going now that I'm older and I go back and re-listen to this, I can kind of tell that this song too this is like another response at Ruthless Records. I can tell that they kind of going back and forth with Ruthless Records and stuff like that. But it's dope, man. One thing in particular though is that the song ends with a sample from the movie Harlem Nights. Harlem Nights is a comedy that Eddie Murphy, Richard Pryor, and Red Fox did back in the day. And there's a scene in the movie where this dirty cop, played by Danny Iola, he shows up in the nightclub, and he fires off a shotgun in a Sugar Ray's joint, and that sample comes from that particular scene in the movie. And even to this day, man, every time that shotgun blast goes off, it still kind of scares me a little bit. So usually when I can tell that the song's getting to that part, I usually turn the volume down because it still kind of startles me a little bit. All right, so track number 7 is Riding, Slipping, and Sliding. I'm gonna be honest with you, man. Back in the day, man, I used to didn't like this song that much. Back when I was a kid, I don't know it. I would listen to it here and there, but most of the time I used to skip it, man. But as I got older, the song actually grew on me, and I really enjoy it nowadays. I really think it's one of the dopest songs on the track. It's a very laid back track. I mean, in keeping with the title, Riding, Slipping, and Slide, man. That's what it's for, man. It's made for riding too, man. It's a smooth track. I enjoy it a lot more today than I used to in the past, man. And it's just a laid back G-Funk track, man. Daz and Kurupt, they just lace the track with for more laid back, charismatic style on this one. Track number 8, Big Pimpin' 2. So honestly, Big Pimpin' 2, this is my least favorite track on the album, mainly because it's really not a song. It's really more of an interlude. So Big Pimpin' 1 was an actual song that appeared on the Above the Rim soundtrack that came out in '94. So a year prior to this album. I don't know, man. Big Pimpin' 2, Big Pimpin' 1 was a great song on Above the Rim. That's one of my favorite songs off of that soundtrack. Big Pimpin' 2, man, I don't know why they called it Big Pimpin' 2, man. It's not even a song. It's just my man Big Pimpin', who recently passed away. He's just doing a spoken word. And it's very short, and they reuse the same instrumental from Big Pimpin' 1. But to me, it's more of like a filler track. That's how I view it. I don't really view it as a legit song or anything. It's just filler. I think it would have been way better if it would have been an actual sequel to the first Big Pimpin'. But it is what it is. Not to me, it's skippable. It's very skippable. It's not something that's very important to listen to on this record. So track number 9 is Let's Play House. Now, Let's Play House, that was the second single from Dogg Food, and it's also a very popular Dogg Pound song. It's another one of their biggest hits as well. Now, this one is a more of an R&B flavor type track. Nate Dogg, the late great Nate Dogg, and Michelle Lay, they sing on the hook and they lace it. They also do other performances, additional vocals on the track. Daz and Kurupt, they come in with their more charismatic, laid-back deliveries. Subject matter-wise, it's really just Daz and Kurupt in player mode. They speak of like their sexual prowess with the females and stuff, but in a more smoother tone, because there's a couple of tracks later on this album where they return to that same subject matter, but it's also a bit more explicit and direct. But yeah, Let's Play House was a real good single, man. It's one of my favorites on the album. It was a big hit for the Dog Pound. Like I said, it's one of their best known tracks. So all right, track number 10. I Don't Like to Dream About Getting Paid. This is one of my favorites. This is one of my favorites, and they actually, this song is an interpolation of a song. I forget what song it is. Let me look it up right quick. Trying to think. Here it goes. Love Will Find a Way by Lionel Richie, and there's also a interpolation of Paid in Full by Eric B and Rakim. Yeah, so Love Will Find a Way. It samples Love Will Find a Way by Lionel Richie, and that this song right here, I always thought it should have been a single. I really thought that it should have been a single because the story that's told on this song, the rags to riches story that Daz and Kurupt that they tell on here. Every time I listen to this song, I can just imagine like a really dope video being made for it. So I always thought that this should have been a single, or at least had a video shot for it. It's just a really good song, and Nate Dogg, he performs the hook, man. He does a great job on the hook. I think this is one of Nate Dogg's greatest performances. And there's another young lady. Her name is Stacy Samley. I believe that's how you pronounce her name. She's the young lady that actually performs on the hook as well. She does the "I've Been Dreaming Too Long" parts, and I don't know, man. It's one of the best songs on the album, man. It's one of the highlights. It's a great song to ride to. It just has that laid back vibe to it where you just want to kick back and you just want to vibe out to it. That's the type of track, and the story that goes along with it is just amazing. That whole rags to riches story of them talking about, struggling and making ends meet, but taking penitentiary chances to hit that lick. And man, there's also a bit of a cautionary tale too about how, like, as fast as you go up, you can easily come back down. So I think this was a great track on here. One of the many highlights on the album, for me in particular. So track number 11, "Do What I Feel." This one features the Lady of Rage, man. I'm gonna be honest with you. Back in the day when I first heard this album, I wasn't always too crazy about this one. Matter of fact, I used to skip it, man, back in the day. I know that sounds crazy now, because I really enjoy this song today. Well, I've always enjoyed it. Well, excuse me. Later on, as I got older in my teens, I started to enjoy it more, and today I appreciate it so much more. But yeah, back in the day, man, I used to skip this song, and I think one day I decided to just listen to the album all the way through, and I realized I was missing out on one of the best verses on the song, and that was by Lady of Rage. Now, granted, even though I like this song much more than I did back when I was a kid, I still don't think it's one of the best songs on the album. I mean, it's solid. It's solid. Daz and Kurupt, man, they, not to take nothing away from them, they do their thing on here, but honestly, the Lady of Rage, she's the MVP on here. She's the MVP on here. And her verse is just so stand out. I mean, she just really just takes that track to another level. So even though I enjoy it so much more now, but I still don't think it's the greatest song on the record. I think it's worth listening to just because of Lady of Rage's performance, because she really makes the song more interesting, in my opinion. All right, so next track. So I'm just gonna go ahead and say, if you got kids or anything and you're watching this video with, you might want to cover their ears, because there's a couple of songs on here that's got like explicit song titles, man, and this is the one of them. This is the first one on here. This song is called "If We All Fuck." That's the name of the title. I'm sorry, excuse my language, but that's the title. And this one features Snoop Dogg as well. He pops back up on the album, and he has a verse on this song along with Daz and Kurupt. I really dug this song, man. It's bass heavy, man. I like the bass on this song. I like to listen to this song in my car, because that bass on here really knocks, man. And I like Daz's production on this one was tight. I feel like this song kind of had a little bit of an East Coast lean to it, in my opinion. But the three of them, Snoop, Daz, and Kurupt, again, man, they're just trading back verses. They just spitting bars about their sexual exploits with women. That's really what that is. But it's a dope song, and I want to mention something, and this is just something that it does for me personally, is that funky guitar lick that's played throughout the song. And the way that the beat is structured, for some reason, every time I listen to this song, it kind of reminds me of "I Thought It Was Me" by Bell Biv DeVoe. I don't know why, but it does. I think it has something to do with that little funky guitar lick that's played throughout the song, and the kind the beat just kind of sounds like a sort of like a more slower tempo of that track. It just reminds me of Bell Biv DeVoe for some reason, and I think that's why I like it so much. But then we go to the next track, and again, so this next song, this is what, 13? This one's called Some Bomb Ass. I'm just gonna say P word. Some bomb ass P word. I'm just gonna keep it like that. So this is another dirty rap track. But it's one of the best songs on the album, honestly, man. Daz really hooked up this beat, man. This one's got a slow tempo, specifically made for the strip clubs, man. It's like a slow tempo for the strippers to do like those like slow and sexy dances on the pole. That's exactly what this song is made for. And actually, it was inspired by the group, probably Death Row, because Death Row used to spend a lot of time in Atlanta back in the 90s, and this was when Freaknik was happening. And that's where they got the inspiration to do this song, was being down in Atlanta during Freaknik. But this song is good. It's good, and it's also funny, man, especially the introduction that's done by Snoop Dogg and Jewel. And Snoop also has a verse on this one as well. Then there's like these chorus parts. I mean, the hook is crazy. The hook is crazy, and then the chorus part at the end is even funnier, man. You just got to go check out this song and listen to it to understand what I'm saying. But the beat is one of the best on the album, man. It's bass heavy. I mean, if you got a nice system in your car, this is definitely the type of track you want to turn up loud and pull up in a Walmart parking lot bumping. But it's just that good, man. But lot of great verses on this song. You know, I mean, the title is crazy, man. But it's a great song, man. It's a great song, one of the best on the record. All right, so track number 14, A Dog's Day Afternoon. Yeah, and then here's another one of my favorites on this one, man. This is another harder track, man. Daz, he hooks up another very gangster G-Funk beat. And him and Kurupt, man, they just kill it, man. But honestly, Kurupt is the MVP on this track. He's got two verses on here. And it's his second verse that really stands out to me, because it's like Kurupt just got into a mode. And he just went full on battle mode. That's how he did. And I mean, lyrically, the stuff that he's saying, it's so hard. It's just so hard. And he's just being so intricate with it. I mean, he really displays his high level skills as an MC on this particular track. Really one of the dopest songs on the album. And Nate Dogg pops up on this one again, but he doesn't sing. He does like a little rap towards the end of the track. But man, one of my favorites on here. So the next song is Reality. And Reality is it's another one of the biggest highlights on this particular record. Reality is a fan favorite amongst fans of the Dogg Food album. This is a fan favorite. I've never met anybody who didn't like Reality. Everybody that I know, especially people that were of age when this record came out, they always talk about how Reality was their favorite song. And interesting enough, Reality was actually intended to be the third single from this album because of how popular it was amongst fans of this record. It was going to be the third single, but unfortunately it didn't happen because I don't know, some things happened between the Dogg Pound and their management, which was Sharitha Knight, who was married to Suge Knight. Something happened, man, where the Dogg Pound had a falling out with her while they was on the road promoting the Dogg Food album, and some disrespectful things got said, and she made the call to Suge, and he stopped supporting the record, for what I know. This is something that I heard from Reggie Wright Jr. on his channel, Bomb First. But yeah, that's unfortunate, man, because Reality is such a great track. Such a great song. It's different, too. It's laid back, and it's not the typical gangster like subject matter either. This is more of an introspective song. If you listen to the lyrics of what Daz and Kurupt are saying, it's very reflective. And another highlight of the song is that Trey D, Big Trey D of the East Siders, and this is before the East Siders even formed. He shows up on this song, and he has a fire verse. I mean, honestly, I would say he's the MVP of this particular song because his verse was just so, it was just so good, man. I mean, that's one of Trey D's best verses, in my opinion. I mean, he really killed the track, and that's not to take nothing away from Daz and Kurupt. They handled their business, man. But Trey D's verse was just, it was just stand out, very stand out. One of the biggest one of his biggest standout verses prior to the East Siders forming, honestly. But yeah, reality, a fan favorite amongst the Dog Pound fan base, honestly. Next track, One by One, and now this is another one that as I got older, I started to really appreciate this song more. Cause when I was a kid, I didn't necessarily dislike it, but I just never really appreciated it like I should. And nowadays I do. I really like it. I like the beat. I think it's one of the dopest beats on the album. But I also, more importantly, I really like the chemistry that is displayed between Daz and Kurupt on this particular song because they really trade verses quite well on here. It's really cool to hear how they bounce off of each other, and you really understand why they became the Dog Pound, why they're one of the greatest rap duos of all time. I mean, this you just gotta listen to this song, man. The beat is hard, and I mean lyrically, both of them they're equal. They're equal lyrically, man. They both eviscerate that song. I mean, they both have slightly different styles, man, but the lyricism on here is just it's just out of this world, man. And they do such a great job at displaying that the whole dynamic and chemistry that they have with each other as a duo. So now we get to the last song on this album called So Much Style. And this one is produced by Superfly, actually. I think this might be the only song that he actually produced, but he actually contributed to a lot of the songs on this record as far as like providing like keyboards and stuff. He contributed to a lot of the songs on here, but So Much Style is him and someone named Overdose that have a production credit. Although on Wikipedia for some reason it gives Kurupt credit for production, but that's not what it says in the liner notes. But anyway, this is another one of my favorites on here. A great way to end the album. So Much Style is actually somewhat stylistically different from all the other tracks on this album, mainly because it's not really a G-Funk song. To me, this song really kind of showcases a bit of an East Coast hip-hop influence. And what I'm saying is, if you listen to the beat doesn't sound like, it doesn't have that bounce and that swing to it like most G-Funk songs have. Like a lot of the songs on this particular album. It has a very sparse and hard-hitting boom bap style to it. And the music in the background, like the keys and everything, it's very jazzy. It's very jazzy. Even the hook, even the way the hook is performed. I don't know who's singing the hook, but the way they perform the hook is very very dreamy and jazzy like. Honestly, this song, it really sounds like something that either a Tribe Called Quest or Pete Rock and CL Smooth would have done. It really does. It really sounds like I feel like they could have done a remix to this song and put Tribe or Pete Rock and CL Smooth on it, and it would have been so dope. But that's the way it sounds to me, and I like it for that. Even though it's a bit stylistically different from the other songs on here, it still fits quite well in the context of the album, and I think it was a great way to end this record. But I really like this I really like this song so much because in a lot of ways I think it really showcased the diversity that Daz and Kurupt have, because majority of this album, this is a West Coast hip hop album, and it definitely is representative of the West Coast with the dominance of the G-Funk sound. But this song, it really showed how, you know what, we ain't gotta do the G-Funk gangster rap stuff. We can do something that's like the East Coast and still kill it and still go hard, and that's what they did. And I don't know, at this time, there was the tensions between the East and West, particularly, like Death Row and Bad Boy, and the whole CNN Mobb Deep Dog Pound issue. For all we know, maybe this was a deliberate thing that Daz and Kurupt wanted to do. Maybe they wanted to show that, like, listen, we can do the East Coast style as well, but we can do it better. Maybe that was the mindset when they recorded this particular song. I don't know, but all I know is that it's one of the dopest tracks on the album, and it's one of my personal favorites on here. But yeah, that's it, man. That's all, what, 17 tracks on here that I just went through. And listen, man, I one of my favorite hip hop albums of all time. This album never gets old for me. You know, and even going back and re-listening and preparing myself for this review, man, it really brought back a lot of memories for me. When I first heard it back in the day when I was a kid, it kind of put me back in that mode. So listening to this album was a bit nostalgic, if I might say. It was a bit nostalgic for me, man, and it just really reminded me of how dope like Death Row Records were. And you know what? Even though this album, I think it sold 2 million copies. I think it sold 2 million copies. I think it went double platinum, if I'm not mistaken. And they had some hit singles. You know, the 2 singles they got released, New York, New York, Let's Play House, they were hits. You know, they charted high. I mean, the album peaked at #1 on the Billboard 200 on November 18th, 1995. And it sold 278,000 copies in its first week. So this album was a success. It was a success. Excuse me. And it says it's one of the last high-selling and critically acclaimed releases from the label, preceding only The Doggfather by Snoop Dogg and Tupac's albums, All Eyes on Me and the Machiavelli album. But I still feel that a lot of times this album is underrated. I still feel that it's a bit underrated, and I think it's because like normie hip hop listeners don't really know about this record that much. They know about The Chronic, they know about Doggstyle, and of course they know about Tupac's 2 Death Row releases. But this album always seems to kind of get lost. It always seems to get overlooked when it comes to that, and that's one of the main reasons why I wanted to talk about this record, because I think that this is one of the greatest albums, along with the aforementioned ones, to ever be released on Death Row. And I think it really needs more recognition, especially with the new generation, the younger generation. I think a lot of them need to know about it, especially ones who are going back and revisiting a lot of these classic Death Row albums. This is one that they really need to check out as well. So I think it definitely needs to get that light shine on it more. I think the Dogg Pound in general is just an underrated rap duo. But in any case, man, they put out one of the greatest hip hop albums of all time, in my opinion, called Dogg Food. And this is also a first pressing. It has, if you can see closely, it has the Death Row Records Interscope label. And this album also came out through Priority Records too. If you can look closely right there, it says executive producers Suge Knight and Dr. Dre, produced by Daz. Yeah, the 2001 reissue doesn't have that on there. And I thought this was also dope as well with the first pressing. If you look this page right here, it's promoting the upcoming Death Row releases at the time, like the Death Row compilation, Danny Boy, Sam Snead, Nate Dogg, Lady of Rage, Michelle A. And also at the bottom talk about Suge's Club, Club 662. I thought that was real neat, man, because we all know the history behind Club 662. Unfortunately, not a lot of it's good history, because that was actually where that was the club where they were headed the night that Tupac was killed. And then you got the Death Row Records logo right there in red. But yeah, I just wanted to show you guys that, because I just recently got this first pressing off of eBay, and it was just really cool to see a lot of that stuff, man. Because we all know that a lot of those albums didn't come out when they were supposed to, because of certain things that transpired through history. But yeah, man, one of the greatest G-Funk albums, one of the greatest hip-hop albums ever recorded, man. The Dogg Food by the Dogg Pound. If you never heard this, man, just go on Spotify, because Snoop Dogg put all the Death Row stuff back up there. Wherever you stream music, just go back up there and check this album out, man. You missing out on one of the greatest West Coast hip-hop albums of all time right here. Certified classic right here. Masterpiece. Alright. So that's it for this album review. As you can see, man, I pulled out the DPG shirt. Pulled out the DPG shirt specifically for this album review. Wanted to represent. Shout out to Daz and Kurupt, Snoop, everybody. But if you enjoyed this album review, just do me a huge favor. If you could just hit that thumbs up and give me a like, as well as share this video. That'd be greatly appreciated. And also be sure to subscribe to the channel. Hit that subscribe button, tap that bell, and that way you'll be notified whenever I drop new content. Also, I want to give a huge shout out and thank you to everybody that's subscribing to the channel, everybody that's been watching the videos, leaving positive comments, everybody that's been showing support, man. I really do appreciate it. And as always, I want to wish everybody a happy holidays whenever this video drop. It might be after the holidays when this video drop, but I just want to wish everybody a blessed day and a blessed week, and love, peace, and music. Peace out, y'all.